This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Hello and welcome into another edition of 3Ma. I am John Kurtz. As always, joined by Derek Young from K-State Online, Cole Manbeck, former beat writer for the Manhattan Mercury. We are talking K-State hoops here today. It was an edge of your seat kind of week last week, and unfortunately the opponents were Oral Roberts and North Alabama. So that's not exactly ideal. We're going to break down everything going on with K-State basketball right now as they head into a huge game with Villanova coming up on Tuesday at Bramlage Coliseum. Another team that is, they have lost some bad games, but a wild resume with some great wins, some bad losses for Nova, so hard to know exactly what to expect heading into that one. As always, our show is brought to you by our friends at Holiday Distillery. If you're going to be watching the game at home on the couch, or if you are going to go hang out before the game, make sure you get some 360 vodka, some Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon from our friends at Holiday Distillery. Make sure you have it for the bowl game too, December 28th, not that far away. How about a great holiday present? Surprise somebody with some Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon. Great little stocking stuffer for the holiday season. They're great K-State folks who support our pod, so please get out and support them. And the other thing I will mention beforehand here is I know right now when we start talking about basketball, and this has started to get out more in terms of like actually on other sites, the talk about Naquan Tomlin and what is going on with him and his situation. We still have not seen him play yet this year for K-State. If you want insight on that, what is happening with that, and some big-time concerns that Cole and I have, you can go to our Patreon page. It is patreon.com/3ma to hear, probably like 20 minutes or so of us talking about that. We did a bowl reaction / everything going on with Naquan Tomlin and a reaction to that on the Patreon page. So make sure you go to patreon.com/3ma. It's only $5 a month. You get multiple extra episodes per week, lots of bonus content. You get access to the Discord server where Cole has been dropping all sorts of inside information and doing a great job with that. Plus, you just get to hang out and talk with us. So patreon.com/3ma for all of that. As far as what's going on the court, wild week last week, boys. K-State somehow beats North Alabama in overtime 75-74. They had no business winning that game. They had no business getting to overtime in that game. I'm still not entirely sure how that happened. Oral Roberts 88-78. At least that game in overtime, you can pitch me that like Oral Roberts should compete for their conference championship and potentially be a tournament team. North Alabama minus their best player, not so much. It's like I don't know where's your concern level right now with this team, DY?
It seesaws a little bit, I'll be honest, because after the Oral Roberts one, I was like, well, that's really another good late game experience, and you're still playing a pretty gritty team that could do some damage in their own league, maybe the NCAA tournament, who knows? And I'm watching other teams that have had really good seasons, really good wins, also lose to similar teams. Mississippi State was cooking there for a while, and they just lost maybe one of their worst losses in program history. They lost on number 309 in the KenPom Southern by 1 point on Sunday. So that's pretty wild considering what they had done before that under Chris Jans. So it waffles back and forth because I don't know what to think of this team, and probably because I think their performance is waffled back and forth too. Because we still have to remember some of their best basketball has been pretty good. I still like that Providence win. They showed some fight against Miami, even though you got down by a lot of points there at one point. So I think I struggle to kind of get a barometer of this team because their level of their performances have wavered so much between, man, that's pretty good, and man, that's not very good. And then I also have to realize how shorthand they have been, without both Naquan Tomlin and Quez Glover. Quez Glover's still going to miss a few more weeks, who knows, on Tomlin. So it's hard to put a finger on it. What I will say is I think they have good basketball in them. I just don't think they're playing it for long enough stretches. And in terms of an on-court issue or concern that I would have, it's more about the guard play, not being able to stay in front of the other team's guards, even Oral Roberts in North Alabama, but also not being able to attack their guards and penetrate and beat them off the dribble yourselves for the most part. That kind of concerns me. Obviously, maybe that changes a little bit when you get the return of Quez Glover. And obviously that's going to change a little bit too just when Day-Day Ames gets more seasoning as well. because he can do that, and he does do that. But when he does do that, he's still making the critical errors and the critical mistakes that freshmen do. And when he's on the other end of the floor, he's still making the critical mistakes and the critical errors that freshmen do. So the growth of Day-Day Ames is a pretty vital component to this year's team, just because he can provide them something with probably something they don't necessarily have in bunches right now.
Yeah, I was at the game on Saturday, and it was definitely a surprise. I thought after the Oral Roberts game, and keep in mind, Oral Roberts is a solid low to mid-major team. I mean, look, they won 30 games just last year. Now, we know they lost some guys, but McBride was a guy that actually enrolled at KU and is a really good guard. They have some talent. They're picked to win it. They're picked to finish second in the Summit League, but to me, they actually look better than South Dakota State. I think you probably, yeah, and South Dakota State's picked to win the league. They're a solid team. I just thought, it would be a wake-up call. And here's the other thing. North Alabama was missing its leading scorer in Johnson, who averages 15 points per game, senior guard. And so, Jakari Lane's first team All-Atlantic Sun preseason pick, sophomore point guard. He gave K-State fits. He had 19 points, 11 assists in the game. He accounted for 11 of North Alabama's 13 assists, but that game can't go to overtime. Like you need to control that game. You're 17.5 point favorites, and at one point they were down 13 points in the second half early on, and then every time K-State made a push and you thought they were going to get over the hump, they either tied it or got ahead by a couple. North Alabama went on like a 7-8-0 run and pushed the lead back out. It just took you had to get some breaks to get it to overtime. They missed the front end of a 1-and-1 with 17 seconds left to go up. They could go up by 5, but they missed the front end, so they're only up 3. And Tyler Perry, we've talked about it before, the numbers of how good he is in the last 5-6 seconds of games, the clutch factor in his career. I think he had 5 shots last season alone in the last 5 seconds of games that were either tied the game or took the lead. And with about 7-8 seconds left in this one, he buries a 3 in case it's able to get it to overtime, and then they hang on. But it's that was a tough week. You don't expect both those types of games to go to overtime, and I just found myself wondering if they have enough explosiveness, athleticism at guard to be able to. They struggle so far to beat guys off the bounce and to stay in front of other teams' guards, from what I've seen.
Yeah, no, it is, and that's why they really got to get Day-Day along. Maybe he's playing a lot better basketball in February. They'll be better for it if he is. I think he's a vital component. Getting Quez Glover back, that'll be a vital component, to have him remain healthy. That'll be huge. It sounds stupid to say, and people can come at me all they want. And this isn't to excuse the performance of having to go to overtime at North Alabama. It's not. But it is huge that they were able to avoid that loss, because that's the kind of loss that is catastrophic for a team that might be on the bubble.
It does though hurt them, DY, the way they played this week in the advanced metrics, because you blow teams like that out, you shoot up. When they beat Central Arkansas 100-56, they moved up eight spots in KenPom.
Yeah,
right?
it does, but no, you don't want to win close, trust me. But
yeah,
losing is worse, because that also can do a quad 3 or a quad 4 loss. And when, at least the last few years, when they're doing the bubble stuff, the quad 3, quad 4 stuff has been pretty impactful.
It's absolutely, the bottom line, winning is far more important than anything. It's just, I only call that out because, you look at some teams that blow these types of teams out, they shoot up in the metrics. The net rankings came out on Monday morning here, and, K-State's 100th in the net. They dropped 12 spots in KenPom after the North Alabama game, just because So, and the net rankings, it's super early. These things are going to fluctuate so much, to the very point we just said, blowouts, etc. You look at the net rankings right now, guys, and USC is 78, and we know USC's got to be a good team. Now they've struggled a little bit since they beat K-State. Texas Tech's 87. Villanova's 50th, who K-State's going to play on Tuesday. Oklahoma State's 196. West Virginia's 209. Texas is 59th. So there's Miami's 63rd. If you actually look at it, Providence is the best team in the net that K-State has played to date. They're 61st in the net rankings, and that's the big win for K-State. So these things will fluctuate. BYU is number 2. Houston's number 1.
I was going to say, I don't consider myself over in the net, because if you win enough Big 12 games to make the tournament, that's going to improve your net and stuff like that a lot. Because the Big 12 is basically just a net booster.
Right. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess like my view on the season at this point is I think they're in a fine spot as far as like what the wins and losses actually are. And I know like the computer numbers aren't looking great, and it'd be better if you're blowing these teams out, but you have avoided the dramatically bad loss. The only other opportunity for that on the schedule is a home game with Chicago State the day after New Year's Day. So, you know, I mean, hey, I'm not putting anything past this team based on the performances that we've seen so far, but they only have one more of those to avoid. And the two losses are to teams that we think are going to be pretty good in Miami and USC. They were ranked at the time. Like, you know, if you would have told me before the season they would have two losses at this point to Miami and USC, they would have the Providence win, and they would have wins over like, South Dakota State or Roberts, at least like solid teams. Here in the non-con that are teams that could be NCAA tournament teams, I'd say, hey, they're in a fine spot. The problem is just like how it's been happening, and that there has not been much consistency. There doesn't seem to be much like in terms of linear growth, you know, from where they've been at. It's just a little all over the board. And I agree. I think the biggest, you know, Cole will laugh. You guys all will laugh and roll your eyes a little bit, just, you know, based on the chats that we have in the group chats during games or whatever. But I mean, a huge concern to me is, what we're seeing at guard right now, and not being able to, you know, like K-State just needs more from the big guys that they have. If Naquan Tomlin's not going to be out there, which again, patreon.com/3maw, if you want more info on that, it's not looking super great necessarily. 1 of 10 for Arthur Kaluma, 5 of 17 for Cam Carter, and 3 of 9 for Tyler Perry. Like you can't have performances like that from all three of those guys. And like Perry can definitely shoot the hell out of the ball. I mean, he absolutely can. But if you're asking him to be more of a point guard, it takes some of his focus away from just finding the best shots. You know, I think he's going to be best if you can have him off the ball some and focusing more on what shots he is going to get. And he's not quick enough to beat guys off the dribble. He's an okay defender, I suppose, but not going to be like a plus defender. And he's not great at creating his own shot. So, you know, just feel like the fact that they're having to have him run point as much as he is right now is kind of holding some things back there, and probably make a big difference if Naquan Tomlin were in the game in terms of how much space there would be and shots that you could be getting outside the arc. But right now they have to just play the hand that they're dealt, and it's just not making me feel really good about the backcourt. And I want to say Quez Glover coming back can be a huge help. I'm still leery about Quez Glover staying healthy after he battled the MCL issue last year and then came and played a couple minutes in an exhibition game this year and already had an injury that's keeping him out for almost 2 months. So I don't know. I'm not sure where you guys are right, Day, but outside of that, I'm not sure where they're going to go in the backcourt to be able to win Big 12 games against what looks like a league that is really good, with like BYU, Cincinnati, Oklahoma all playing really good basketball. And those were teams that we thought would be more toward the bottom of the league. So it's going to be tough.
Well, some others that are going to be towards the bottom of the league that haven't been playing good basketball are Oklahoma State and West Virginia. So I guess it's a little bit of a trade there. I would say that Tyler Perry's probably created more shots than we're giving him credit for. Some of the issues, he's not taking them. So I think he's got to be a little bit more selfish in his shot selection. Whenever he gets an open look, you shoot that sucker. And I think, I haven't put a lot on the coaches because I don't think a ton of it needs to be it should have been on the coaches. Now, North Alabama, you got to be better than that in just about every area. But one thing I would say is like I expect them to get, create some looks for Tyler Perry, at least more than what we've seen. But Tyler Perry's got to be willing to shoot it whenever he has daylight as well, because I think that is probably something that hasn't been there. Shot selection, I thought in general, was very poor against North Alabama. I think they were taking shots they shouldn't, and they were passing up ones that they shouldn't.
Yeah, to that point, I mean, in the last 5 games in the first half, Tyler Perry has only attempted 20 shots overall. I mean, he's got 14 points on 20 field goal attempts in the first half of the last 5 games. And here's kind of a remarkable stat that's unfortunate. He's 0 of 13 from 3 in those last 5 first halves. So the last 5 games, he's shooting around 25% from 3. They just got to get him more looks. He's got to get more shots up, and better looks. And that comes down to, I think, what we view as the ideal scenario is he can slide more off the ball, other guys can create, and he'll have more open looks. And I think we all view that is why it would be super helpful to get Quez Glover back at his normal self, healthy, explosive, good point guard, veteran guy. Day-Day Ames more acclimated, and then obviously getting Naquan Tomlin back, which, as you mentioned, John, on our Patreon pod, who knows where that's going to go right now. So I know there's some frustration over that. So who knows?
Let's take a break. Let's take a break and regroup and discuss a little more along this. But first, we got to thank our friends at Home Field Apparel. Make sure you get to homefieldapparel.com. Great stocking stuffer for the holidays. Get a sweet, old school, vintage looking K-State shirt with the awesome old logos, whether it's Cat Script basketball shirt, if you want that for hoop season. You want the old Copper Bowl shirt, which is a personal favorite of mine. Those are pretty slick as well. They also gave me the most comfortable hoodie that I think I've ever had with the Wildcat script on the front. So homefieldapparel.com, it's promo code 3MA23 to get 15% off your first order. So let them know that the 3MA sent you there and get 15% off. We're back in just a moment.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
Where you at, DY, right now on Arthur Kaluma? Because, Kaluma at times has been great. He went through a stretch where he was red hot before the North Alabama game, and then all of a sudden he puts out a 1 for 10, and he's had moments where he's been essentially benched, pseudo suspended almost from Jerome Tang for not being bought in. He had the moment where he kind of called him out in the post-game press conference, said he needs to buy in. Will McNair got this similar type of treatment, it sounded like, from Tang on Saturday, didn't play. That's another thing with this team. I know I started asking about Kaluma, but they've just had so many moments like this. Day-Day Ames missed a game with a suspension from the fighting thing. Like, there's been so much movement with the personnel. It feels like they're disjointed, not a lot of chemistry developing, and our hope here is that they get two guys back that they'll then have to reintegrate too. So, it just feels like they have not had a chance to really develop a lot together, and maybe that is hurting a guy like Arthur Kaluma in that scenario.
Yeah, not a lot of continuity. So, look, I still expect them to play much better basketball in a couple more months. They just have to survive this stretch. You are seeing some minute distribution being used as a message, whether it's Arthur Kaluma, whether it's Will McNair. You've had a handful of guys miss at least one game that you were hoping to count on this year. Naquan Tomlin's missed the entire year. Quez Glover's missed almost the entire year. Day-Day Ames has missed a game. Will McNair has now missed a game. Arthur Kaluma has missed a game. Not a lot of continuity, but some of it is the way that Jerome Tang conducts business, right? I'm not saying this is all great signs because you're seeing multiple examples. Day-Day Ames was his game that he missed. That doesn't really concern me as much. He took a haymaker and whatever. But doing it this way last year worked by the time it got to March, right? Because I don't think it was as abrupt, but I think there was a game or two, maybe three, where there was little to no minutes for Ish Massoud while Jerome Tang was trying to send a message to him that he needed to play a certain freaking way or he wouldn't get on the floor. And by the time March came around, Ish finally accepted that what he was being told by Jerome Tang was one of their better players. He's hoping this same coaching and teaching technique will probably get through to Arthur Kaluma and Will McNair, who are probably going through similar things as they are in a new system with a new coach.
Do you think this team has enough leadership, DY?
Compared to last year, no. But Marquise Noel is one of the best leaders to ever go through the program. Enough leadership, yeah. But you got to continue to grow that.
I was going to say, that can continue to grow. I think Tyler Perry could be a leader. I
think he is. He's one of the. I think he's a great leader, to be quite honest. But it's hard to be a great leader right away in your first year in a new program where you have all these new teammates that you want to follow you, and they're used to following somebody else. So that's part of the transfer portal. The thing you have to, it's hard to create that stuff. It's not innate, it's organic, and it builds over time. And to be honest, look, Marquise Noel was a fantastic leader, but there was problems with last year's team at this time last year.
Yeah, Cam Carter's a guy that can probably be a good leader. He's just got to be more vocal and take that reign.
I just don't think you're asking to be someone he's not.
Yeah,
if you're
he's
more vocal.
Yeah, he's a more quiet guy by nature. Yeah, look, it's hopefully they can figure it out. Obviously, we have a tremendous amount of trust in this coaching staff and Jerome Tang, so trust that they will figure it out. But things do crank up now. I mean, you got Villanova on Tuesday night. You got at LSU. Now, LSU's really struggled, but it'll still be a tricky game. It's a Saturday game. They're 165th in the net. They're 5-3 right now. Jalen Cook, the star point guard they landed in the portal, hasn't been cleared by the NCAA to play.
I will say they've played better of late. They've won 4 of their last 5 games. They lost to Syracuse, obviously, but they did beat Wake Forest, North Texas, and St. Louis.
They still have some talented pieces, so that'll be a tricky game on the road, the first true road game for this team this year. And then they've got Nebraska, who's off to a 7-2 or 7-1 start. Right? They lost. They got
7-1, but they got stomped by Creighton.
Creighton missed by 30.
Yeah, I watched the game, and that dropped Nebraska at Ken Palm. Nebraska dropped like 15 spots because of that. They were at 44 in Ken Palm heading into yesterday. Now Nebraska is 76th in the net rankings. And then Wichita State is off to a solid start. They lost by 10 to Missouri on Sunday, but they're 88th in the net. They're 7-2. Paul Mills is doing a nice job with that team. So those next 4 games, you got Villanova, then out LSU, then Nebraska, and then Wichita State, Kansas City. So you got to get better quickly, and hopefully that'll be the case.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's a fair point to single out like last year and how last year went, and it wasn't perfect. And I made a comment, I think, to one of you guys. I don't remember, that was Cole, maybe, when we were just chatting at some point this weekend. I was like, it did feel like they were starting to put some things together by this point, but I don't know. We were still pretty pleased that they won an overtime game with West Virginia the day after the day after the Sugar Bowl. They had Cole pointed out to me, like, hey, Big 12 championship game last year, K-State wins, and then we watched that Wichita State game that was not a very good performance at all, but they did find a way to escape with a win.
It was beyond this point in the schedule where they got smacked by Butler, though, right?
No, that was in November.
That was early. I think that was November.
It was before the Big 12 championship.
That was right before the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, because you were going from Butler, I think, down to Dallas, and I was getting ready to.
That was right before it. They did have a dogfight with Radford, I think, but that might have been right before Thanksgiving or right before Christmas.
That you're right. It was one of the pre-holiday games. I do remember that. So, I mean, it wasn't perfect. I guess I would just say, and maybe some of this is just where our expectation level was this year, rightfully so, after everything they accomplished last year. But it also, it just feels like there's more going on this year. There's more that last year, at least, it was like guys were playing and you felt like developing some continuity together, whatever. It's just like there's been so much going on with the pseudo suspensions and guys hurt, and then the Naquan Tomlin thing, like, kind of hanging over everybody right now. And again, patreon.com/3mile for that. But I just imagine that's got to be a distraction to everybody at this point, and they don't know entirely how to, if you're thinking about how you're structuring practice or what to think about the team, are you going full bore, like, we just got to figure it out without him, or are you still leaving it open, like, hey, we maybe need to tweak some things at how we're doing this because we feel like Naquan may come back? And then, so I don't know, dude. It feels like there's a lot more happening on the periphery of the season right now that gives me more concern about where this is headed than how things went down last year.
No, I think that's fair. I don't feel as, I make these comparisons, but I would still think I felt a little bit better about last year's team. But I really didn't believe last year's team was capable of doing what they did until they went and beat Texas and Baylor on the road.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So do you guys think they beat Villanova? I mean, because we could feel a lot different after it. All it takes is one really good performance. I do, because it's at home. It's going to be finally like. And I don't like to like bang on it, but like I guess I'm not criticizing anyone. I guess I'm a little surprised that there hasn't been one good atmosphere, like one amazing or like great atmosphere. I realize the opponents are the opponents, but one great atmosphere yet, and we're in the beginning of December. Obviously, you're going to get that for Villanova, but I've been very surprised based on what this coach staff accomplished last year that they haven't had one sellout yet. Really, really disappointing crowd on Saturday. That was shocking to me when I got in there about 30 minutes before tip, and then just watching, you could tell it wasn't get close to full. And I just thought first Saturday game, 1 o'clock tip, football now essentially over. You don't have the travel for football until the bowl game. Now, I will say that that was a worse drive for me, DY, than John was on the phone with me for like an hour of the drive. On the drive home, we were talking about the game. That was a worse drive for me going home than it was in the 10 inches of snow on the Iowa State game. The fog was miserable. It was foggy. It was raining. People were driving 25 miles per hour below the speed limit. You could hardly see. The whole day, the fog didn't burn off. So I do wonder if, like,
maybe that day, because I guess here's a point about I was going to make on that is usually one of the worst attended games of the year is the one right before Thanksgiving, because the students are gone and no one, a lot of people are gone. And they played Central Arkansas, who's, I think, the worst or second worst team that they've played this year. And that might have been the best crowd of the year. And I don't know why.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the only thing I can think is like some people got on the road and they're like, this fog is pretty rough. I mean, I thought it would have burned off and I just kept going to Manhattan. It didn't. And then it didn't burn off through the day and was still like that going home at night back to KC. And look, I'm guilty of it too. I'm not trying to criticize fans. I have season tickets. I've only been to 2 home games so far. These weeknight non-con games are tough to get to. We'll be at Villanova on Tuesday night and be at the Nebraska game, and I'll be at every Big 12 game. I mean, I'm committed to that. I went to every Big 12 game last year too. But that was a little disheartening that there weren't more people there on Saturday. Hopefully the Villanova game is packed and a great atmosphere and gives these guys a juice and a lift that they maybe haven't had yet this year.
Yeah, because here's the thing, and I'm not trying to draw conclusions, and this could be very much leaping to conclusions. They've played the best in those overtimes, right? That's the only time where that crowd has exploded this year.
Yeah, yeah. And Villanova is a wacky team to figure out, man.
Yeah,
I was going to ask, Cole. I mean, like, so Villanova, they've lost 3 games to Philly teams. They've lost to, basically, they've lost
5, right?
Yeah,
they've lost at Penn. They've lost to St. Joe's at home. They lost to Drexel at home. And then in between those games, they crushed Maryland. They crushed Texas Tech. They beat North Carolina, and they hammered Memphis. So, like, I don't.
Yeah. What I would say is North Carolina and Memphis are good. Texas Tech is okay. And I think Maryland's terrible. So.
Yeah. So Maryland's 70th in Ken Palm. They crushed them. They beat Memphis, which is 42nd in Ken Palm. They beat them by 16. They were up by like 30 in that game. They beat Texas Tech by 16, which is 52nd in Ken Palm. And then they beat a really good North Carolina team that's 12th in Ken Palm and handed the Tar Heels their only loss on the season. And that was all in the battle for Atlantis on a neutral court. They were really good there. And then they come home from that and they're ranked, 15th, 14th in the country. In Ken Palm, they were 14th. And then they lose back-to-back games to St. Joseph's and to Drexel. And now they're 34th in Ken Palm. They dropped 20 spots. And they are just kind of a perplexing team to figure out. They shot their last 2 games from 3. They were a combined 15 of 64 from beyond the arc, which is 23%. And that worries me a little bit, guys, because I fear that they're going to have a breakout game, that they're due for a good 3-point shooting game, but they haven't been a very good 3-point shooting team this year, which has kind of been a trademark of Villanova under Jay Wright and, now Kyle Neptune, the head coach in his second year with the Wildcats.
I was just about to say, dude, I could not tell you who Villanova's coach is anymore.
I can give you the full rundown on Villanova, man.
It was Jay Wright's lead assistant.
Yeah. Kyle Neptune took over. He's in his second year at the program as the head coach, but he was his lead assistant at Villanova from 2013 to 2021. Then he took the Fordham head coaching job in 2021, coached 1 year there. Jay Wright retires, and essentially, I think DY just kind of handpicked his successor. They allowed him to do that, and it was there wasn't even really a search. It was Kyle Neptune, and they went 17-17 last year. They missed the NCAA tournament in his first year. They finished 51st in Ken Palm, and now this year they've been kind of up and down. They are long at guard. You look at like TJ Bamba, a transfer from Washington State. He's 6'5". Justin Moore, their longtime point guard, 100 career starts. Averaged double figures in all 5 of his seasons at Villanova. He's 6'5". Tyler Burton, one of the most sought-after transfers in the country, coming in from Richmond. He's got over 1,700 career points. He's averaged 7 rebounds per game his last 4 years at Richmond. He's a really veteran guy that, I thought was going to go pro and go to the NBA draft. He's 6'7". And then Dixon in the post, their center, very talented big, 81 career starts. Like the thing that you look at, I think Dixon has over 1,500 career points. Like they got some guys that are very experienced college basketball players that have been around a lot. Justin Moore, over 1,500 points in his career. He's their point guard. He had the Achilles tear right before KU in the Elite Eight or Final Four in 2021, I think. Eric Dixon, 6'8" center, 255 pounds, started 81 games in his Wildcat career, averaged 15 points and 7 boards last season. This season, he's averaging 15 points and 6.6 rebounds, and he's really consistent. Shot 50% from the floor as a sophomore, 49% as a junior, and 48% right now as a senior. He can step out and shoot the three, 72 of 183 from beyond the arc in his career. That's 39%. Also a really good free throw shooter at 79% in his career on 286 attempts. And he had 34 points on 11 of 19 shooting and 10 rebounds against North Carolina in the battle for Atlantis this year. And Armando Bacot had one of his worst games that you'll ever see, the All-American center for North Carolina going up against Dixon. I think he shot like 20% from the floor. He was held to like 10 or 8 points, and Dixon lit him up, 34 points on 11 of 19 shooting. So a lot of experience on this team when I run through everything. And but they have struggled shooting the ball some, and they were very reliant on the three-point shot. There are only, let's see here, I pulled the numbers. They're fourth in the country in three-point rate. 50.5% of their threes or shots come from three, which means 49.5% of their shots come from two, which is the fourth lowest out of 363 college basketball teams. So they're very reliant on the three-point shot, which is largely why they've lost their last couple of games, because they shot it so poorly from beyond the arc. They're in the 200s nationally in three-point offense. So they have not been very consistent. I think they're shooting around 32% from three.
Well, K-State was 3 of 18, Cole, on Saturday, might I remind you. So if we're talking about, due for a better shooting performance.
And 4 and 28 against Providence, too. So 2 really bad three-point shooting performances. But then in between, like you mentioned, they've shot the ball relatively well from three. So it's been up and down.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on where the season is headed? Villanova, anything?
I think this is a big moment for this team on Tuesday night.
Yeah,
I would agree. I think it can very much feel a lot better, both from a fan standpoint, but for that team and the direction that they're headed, and maybe validate some of the coaching that they are getting, and it could create more buy-in if they can beat a team like Villanova.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this is a big moment for this team, and I'll just also mention you got to keep these guys off the free throw line. They're the second best free throw shooting team in the country. They make 82.4% of their shots from the charity stripe. That's second best in America. And they get to the line a decent amount. They're top 30 in free throws made per offensive possession. So got to keep these guys off the line. Now, you should be able to finish inside against them. Villanova's 322nd in the country in block percentage, only blocking 3.3% of their opponent's shots. So K-State should be able to have some success finishing inside, though I did just tell you that Eric Dixon kind of manhandled Bacot. And, when you look at rebounding, Villanova 14th in the country in defensive rebounding percentage. K-State 182nd in the country at defensive rebounding percentage. But when you look at offensive boards, K-State's 11th in the country in offensive rebounding percentage at 38%. Villanova's in 100th nationally at 30%. So not a team that's going to attack the glass heavily and exploit K-State on the defensive rebounding. So I think it's an opportunity. Now, Villanova's going to come in hungry. They've lost 2 in a row. They're going to be fired up, and they're due for a much better shooting performance. At the same time, they haven't been very good defensively over the last couple of weeks, and they're 293rd in three-point defense at 36.3% from beyond the arc. So K-State's 242nd in three-point defense at 34.6%. Something's going to give here. You got to hope that you got to chase them off the line. You got to chase them off the three-point line. And then this is a game where Will McNair is going to have to probably get back out on the court, because Eric Dixon's a bigger, thicker, stronger body, but he can also pull you out and drag you out to beyond the arc. So that's just something K-State's going to have to figure if they're willing to live with or not in this game.
I'll put it to you like this, and this is an open-ended question for all of us. I don't know if gauntlet's the right word, but you're going through a stretch here where you're playing Villanova, LSU, Nebraska, Wichita State. Probably the meatiest part of your non-conference schedule. in terms of success of games? How many do they have to win, or is it dependent on a team you might beat?
Yeah, I was going to say, DY, if they went 3-1 through this stretch, I'd feel good. Because that means they can't contend.
3-1 was going to be my answer, yeah.
3-1, does one of the wins have to be over Villanova?
No, it doesn't. I think I could live with winning at LSU, beating Nebraska, beating Wichita State, and looking, and continue to look like they've improved, right? Because this last week, it looked like they kind of took a step backwards. But if the on-the-court product and the way that they play in those games looks a little more crisp and sharp, and it looks like they're building that chemistry, I think I'll feel better and feel decent. Like, you get through this non-con 10-3 and what is a much tougher non-con than last year, I'd feel good about that. So 3-1, and it doesn't matter who it's against. Now, I could easily see a scenario, DY, and I think I talked to you about it on the phone last week, where they beat Villanova and then lose at LSU. It's a tricky spot.
No, that is a tricky spot. But I was going to tell you, that was my next question. If they beat Villanova, can you still stomach 3-1? Or does it depend on if the loss is like to Nebraska or Wichita? Because
I think
LSU is the one that I would understand. I would understand losing LSU. I would have a harder time with Wichita State or Nebraska.
Although Wichita State and Nebraska are better teams than LSU.
Yeah.
But it's just that.
But
it's on the road. It's a regional rivalry thing.
Regional rival. Wichita State's in Kansas City. Nebraska's on your home floor. And
I will say, a relatively favorable start to Big 12 play for this team. You host UCF to open up the league play, and then you go to West Virginia, who's really struggling.
That's good. Yeah, playing West Virginia's hard, though.
Well, it'll be hard. I mean, Jesse Edwards is a load, but it's a game that you could win and get off to.
I just can't. I don't know. I guess my basketball memory is not as sharp as my football one. I just never can remember going to Morgantown and winning.
I don't even know why I'm talking about favorable Big 12, because then they go to Tech, then they host Baylor. They got at Iowa State, at Houston.
By the way, you mentioned BYU's number 2 in the net. Kansas State has to go to Provo.
Oh, you're right. I thought they got them at home. Oh, they do. They play them both times.
Well, they got them both times. Yeah. Got the back.
And they got to go to Houston, and they're number 1 in the net.
And Cincinnati is 14 in the net. There's 6 teams in the top 20 in the net. Oklahoma's 19th. Yeah. Iowa State's 13th.
Think about those new Big 12 teams. 3 of them are in the top 14 in the net right
now. Just UCF dragging everything down. All right. We'll get out to Home Field Apparel, homefieldapparel.com. Use promo code 3MA23 to get 15% off your first order. Stock up on your Ben Holiday bottled and bond bourbon and your 360 vodka. If you want to hear more about the Naquan Tomlin situation and what is going on with that, once again, patreon.com/3MA, just $5 a month. You can get access to that. Cole and I talked plenty about it, along with K-State's bowl draw in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. So that'll wrap it up for us here. We appreciate Nick Springer behind the scenes, as always. For Derek Young and Cole Manbeck, I am John Kurtz. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon on 3MA.